Tactile switches are among my favorites to use in personal builds, not only for their often unique acoustics, but the feel of the tactile bump in the downstroke. There's just something satisfying about knowing when you've actuated the switch by feel. But the one board in my arsenal I haven't tried tactiles in yet is my Mode Envoy, and that needs to change now. So, like the linear switch version we released a little bit ago, here's our tactile switch Showdown, Mode Envoy edition. This will be a more dense piece than the previous one, as we're also attempting to describe how the tactile event feels as best we can. A huge shout out and thank you to Momoka for sending over their sharks for us to test with today. No money changed hands with this exchange and all opinions remain my own. Also, sorry this content took so long. All other switches were purchased by me, and all of the switches on hand today, unless otherwise noted, were hand-lubed by me. Links for everything today are down in the video's description, as well as links to our socials and the Discord, and chapters to get to the stuff that matters most to you. Let's refamiliarize ourselves with the test platform. A Mode Envoy in the black aluminum case with multicolor stainless steel weight and accents, case foam, FR4 plate, hot swap PCB, and DCX cyanide with artisans and novelties from Drop, Zomo, and Novelkeys/D brand. The switch I typically have in this board is an MK Purple Slush Linear, so this will be a far departure from what this typically sounds and feels like. Now let's get on to the first switch tested, Cherry MX Ergo Clears. This, oddly enough, is the lightest tactile bump in the group in terms of force perceived, but it's still a decent step up in tactility coming from something like an MX Brown or similar. Carrying a very traditional mix of materials for a Cherry RGB switch, polycarbonate top, milky nylon bottom, palm stem, and a 55-gram spring, these originally came with just the springs lube and the tiniest, almost insubstantial amount of oil on the legs. The design overall is more closely related to the Hyperglides than the MX2A line Cherry produces, though it's still an improvement over earlier gen Cherry MX switches. In feel, there's a bit of pre-travel before the tactile event begins, leading into a pointed but reasonably well-rounded and tall peak that's perceptibly taller feeling than something more akin to an MX Brown, with quick roll-off. Post-travel after the tactile event feels smooth and predictable to use, and spring weight controls tactile feel and rate of depression really well. Like all Cherry switches, there is scratch in this, even after lubing. It's not that they feel scratchy anymore, but it's definitely there in the acoustics, lending a sort of texture that a pre-broken-in switch or something that's just naturally smoother doesn't have. You'll either love this or hate it. Personally, I'm kinda here for it. You'll also want to be sure you lube the legs and the back of the leaf adequately, as some of these can have a bit of leaf ping. I also highly recommend filming them. We use TX 0.15mm films for our batch. Next up are Dukharo MO Green V2s. This particular version appears to no longer be in production, though the V3s listed on AliExpress seem to have all the same specs except for an opaque top housing instead of the translucent one we have today. I can't speak to any other changes, however. They ship with light lube on the legs and slide rails and springs. These feel good enough out of the box that this is actually the only switch we didn't lube or film. This is where the tactility really ramps up for this testing. There almost isn't a single point in switch travel that you don't feel the presence of this behemoth of a bump, but neither does it ever feel sharp. There's no pre-travel at all, and just a modicum of post-travel after the event, while still feeling very smooth and arc length-like, with a progressive increase in resistance, followed by a similarly smooth and gradual roll-off. This is a switch that's definitely designed with fully utilizing every bit of the 3.8mm of travel in mind, and that's definitely what it forces you to do one way or another. The bump itself feels massive underhand, being accentuated by the 60-gram two-stage spring. While the material composition looks very similar on paper to the Ergo clears, they sound dramatically different and lack all scratch or ping of any kind from a normal typing distance. After these, we threw in some Momoka Sharks. These arrived with little to no lube on them, so we hand lubed them with 3204, as this is, I believe, the most aggressive Tactile in my collection, and with the most interesting Tactile event. Like the MO Green V2s, there's basically no pre-travel, followed by a monstrously steep ramp up to a tall but well-rounded peak and immediate roll-off. It feels like there's an abundance of linear post-travel after this as compared to the Ergo clears, despite them having the same overall travel distance. For some, including myself, this might be a bit distracting, but for others, this could be the sort of tactile switch you're looking for. It forces you to be quite intentional with your keystrokes, so if you're a lighter-handed typist or prefer less aggressive tactility, this may not be for you. We have pretty typical materials used here, with a PA66 nylon bottom, polycarb top housing, palm stem, and a 65-gram two-stage spring. The stem is shockingly smooth. Even out of the box, these were among the smoothest stock switches I had, but there were several springs that had pinging issues, and we also had some leaf ping in a handful of switches, hence hand lubing them. The housings fit well enough together that no films were used either. Acoustically, these were rich and full, with a deeper bass-driven sound that was quite pleasing in our FR4 plate, spacebar notwithstanding. Last up was the Bolsa Supply Zaku 2 made by Tactile. This is the first in the Zaku line I've personally owned, but I was first turned on to these from trying out a Forever 65 with the linear Zakus at a local meet and fell absolutely in love with them. The tactile version shares much the same overall construction, but with a colorway designed to match the MSO6 Zaku 2 from Mobile Suit Gundam. Tactile springs are among my personal favorites, so unsurprisingly to me, these 63.5-gram two-stage affairs feel really nice, with well-controlled switch depression and snappy rebound. The tactile bump is quite similar to the Momoka Sharks, with zero pre-travel, a round but tall-feeling bump with aggressive roll-in and roll-off characteristics, and observably linear post-travel. However, due to the long pole design of the stem, these feel more natural for me to type on as they stop post-travel before it becomes distracting. But like all things preference-based, your mileage here may vary. If I had to describe this tactility any other way, imagine rolling a dolly up and down a flight of stairs. That's kind of what this feels like. In terms of sound, these are loud, though lacking a bit of body compared to the rest of the switches, making them surprisingly crisp and bright. Everything about this switch is quite polarizing, so of course, being the contrarian I am, this was actually my personal favorite switch in today's Showdown. I'm sure each of you has your own favorites from today, both in terms of sound and feel, and honestly, every Switch we tested sounds and feels great in my mode Envoy. While my personal favorite might have been the Zaku 2s, there's merit to each of these, and still even more kinds of tactility for us to explore on this and other keyboards. Sound off in the comments and let me know what your favorite tactile Switch is and what other tactiles you'd like to see us test in the future. Be sure to toss us a like if you found today's video helpful, toss us a follow and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our content. Take care of yourselves and one another, and we'll see you all next time.